Welcome to the West and North London podcast, where we sit down each and every week to answer your big Arsenal questions. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Tim.
I feel like I'm out of frame here. I have to get used to this video thing every time I look at myself and I'm like, that's weird. Other people are going to be watching me.
I end up just having a different window open because actually looking at me kind of weirds me out when I'm talking. I don't know, kind of
I believe that. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, my only fear is if I end up picking my nose or something without thinking about it because I'm not looking at myself.
Right? Yeah, that's the things you do when you're not thinking. I got to keep my own image up here so I can monitor my own behavior. All right, well, we've got a show for you this week to wrap up this season. And so, without further ado, let's get this thing rolling with some drinks. What do you got in your hand this week?
Well, I'm drinking the Aslan. It is called the Ginger Rye. It's a spice rye ale, which I'm not exactly sure what a rye ale means.
Okay.
And it's ginger. It's very fruit forward. I got it because it was the seasonal and it looked fun. Has fun little label, and I like Aslan quite a bit. It's all right. It's a little bit. I don't know. It's not very beery. It doesn't feel like a beer to me. It's very ginger forward, very citrus forward, just a very slight beer flavor. And I was kind of hoping for a little bit more beer. But if that's your type of thing, go for it. I'm failing to see the rye part of it. I don't taste it. As I said, I'm not really familiar with rye ales, so.
Does it taste like a wheat beer?
It doesn't taste much like a beer at all. That's
weird.
The weird thing. There's a slight aftertaste. I could see is the rye aftertaste, but it really almost tastes like a spritzer to me.
Oh,
yeah.
Definitely the wrong end of the spectrum for me,
yeah.
I think.
I don't think you'd like
it.
it.
All the fruit, but none of the beer.
Exactly. I mean, it's going to get me where I'm going. See what the percentage on it. It's 5.2, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah, I'm not lining up to get it, I think.
I'm really boring. I'm dipping back into the well for my very last bottom cutter of my secret supply.
I'm not going to complain about that. We're a judge. That is a good quality beer.
I'm sad that it's the last one, really, but I'll have to get creative, get something good for my next round.
I do actually, when I go to the grocery store, I always have a thought of, I should try and find something fun or new to talk about on the show.
Yes, I've only started going to the store more recently, so I got to get that into my routine again and start exploring some stuff.
Yeah, I was definitely the designated store runner during this whole time, so I had the control of the choices.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
That makes me think I really need there needs to be a bottle shop in my area. I don't really have a go-to beer spot that's completely focused on beer.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, and I don't think I know of one up around there. Yeah, maybe you should start one.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
That's what this town needs.
Another bottle shop?
Yet another. There's not really one up in this area, though. There's breweries, but not as many bottle shops.
Yeah, there's something you said having a nice bottle shop where you get kind of a huge variety. It's nice to have breweries, but sometimes it's nice to have a one-stop shop where you can get all your beers.
Right. Well, I guess with that, we'll move on from drinks and move on to Tim's bit.
Well, my Tim's bit for the week is seeing as the season's over and most of the players are going to have a little bit of a vacation. Some of them less so with the Euros coming up. But I was wondering, where would you send the team on, including Arteta and the team, on vacation during the break? And it's not like a training camp; it's just a vacation. Where would you send them?
Not a training camp.
Not a training camp. This is pure just rest and relaxation.
Right. Throwing me for a loop with the where's a good vacation spot.
And I am going to say COVID restrictions not applying and all that jazz.
Yeah, where do I want to send them? gonna go with let's go with Fiji.
Oh, Fiji.
Just gonna throw it out there. That's a place I would want to go check out.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool. It's just, nice beaches. Gosh, there's a famous author that died there and is buried there. He died of syphilis, and I'm trying to remember. French author. It's not coming to me. Yeah, it sounds like a cool place. I could see that.
Yeah, that's just. It seems like a tropical vacation is due for this team. They need some rest and relaxation after all this.
I'm just imagining Tierney though in a tropical island. I think he would melt instantly.
Oh my gosh,
He would
yeah.
get skin cancer.
Tierney could survive here. He'd do real well in Seattle. Maybe not so much in the summer though. I think anywhere he goes, he needs like overcast skies 90% of the time.
Yeah, I mean that's here.
Yeah,
It's always reminding me that I need reminding that what we consider hot, a lot of the world doesn't consider hot at all.
true.
That
Although it's getting hotter, I feel like the last few years, I felt like air conditioning was more necessary than I ever did before. Like I
yeah,
think it's definitely we've gotten hotter summers in recent years than we used to.
true. I think Fiji. I was gonna say something tropical, and I think Fiji is probably the best answer for that. I think they'll get the best relaxation, and I'm just enjoying seeing them like playing beach volleyball in my mind and all that.
Yes, this is making me want to go. Why are we sending the team? They already have a ton of money. Let's send ourselves.
Yeah, and they don't deserve a vacation anyways, or maybe
That
they
would be a
do.
great segue into like an announcing our new Patreon.
uh,
our true vacation fund.
yeah, not
Maybe
that we
someday.
someday.
Okay. So we're actually here to talk about Arsenal, not just sending them on vacation, but what they did on the field to end this season. So, first of all, I think both of us can say we're mighty sad to see this season go, even though it was maybe not the best one by any means. I was actually really enjoying these last few games where they looked good. They played really well. Like I get the competition is pretty weak, but it was still enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the bittersweet part about it is that, and I know we're going to go into kind of a more holistic thing in the coming weeks, but just over the last couple games, we have felt like we're kind of starting to click in a real way, and that
Yeah.
it's one of those things where is the break too soon? Could we have kind of built on that momentum more, or is it something? Or is it momentum that can be used in the off season to build and step on further? But you couldn't ask for a better end to the season, really.
Yeah, it was unfortunate that we were really relying on other teams messing up, which is never a good position to be in. You want to be in control of your destiny, and we did our part, and unfortunately, it didn't come together on the final day. I mean, it was really down to Spurs messing up, and they actually Gareth Bale bailed them out.
I'm so mad at Leicester right now. I'm so very mad at Leicester
Yeah.
because I that would have been kind of almost like getting a trophy. I know it sounds kind of
Mm-hmm.
silly to say, but that was kind of like not a minimum requirement because we missed the minimum requirements in my mind. Again, we'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But getting being ahead of Spurs would have just been a nice, I don't know, something to hold on to a little bit, something nice to hold on to. But at the end of the day, we weren't far off. I mean, it was what, 2 goals, 1 goal was the difference between us and Spurs at the end of the
Oh,
day.
as far as goal differential,
Yeah, because that's where we ended on, right? Tied with them on goal differential.
they had ended up with 62 points, so
Oh,
they
was it
they
one more
were
point?
yep 1 point ahead, and the goal differential they had 23 plus 23. We're at
Oh, it
16.
was 1 point. Yeah, I don't. Sorry, I'm completely messing up my. But yeah, so 1 point isn't the hugest of differences. And to think of how everybody at Spurs was talking about how they were like the best team they've ever had, and they were first place for a couple while. It kind of does put our season a little bit more into a perspective that
Well, we played up, maybe, coming from relegation spots to up to eighth and having them kind of meet us halfway.
yeah.
It was them messing it up at the end of the season and us figuring out how to right the ship by the end of the season.
Yeah, but I mean, and yeah, it is the opponents we played weren't necessarily the highest of quality. Uh, I'm trying to remember if Brighton had anything at all to play for in that last game.
Uh
I don't
no,
think.
they were well out of relegation, and so
Yeah, yeah,
they
and
ended
so
up at
and
16th.
yeah, so I'm pretty sure that the quality wasn't the greatest, but they were still good wins, and they're the type of wins that we weren't doing earlier on in the season. I mean, Brighton's a great example of that. To
Yeah.
not put too fine a point on it, and and especially that Brighton game, it really did feel like it was the type of game I would like to see us play more often.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's nice to end the season on a win. I think that's the 9th season in a row we've won on a or gone on a win with. So, yeah, gives us hope for next year. I think.
Yeah.
What are your takeaways from those last two games?
Well, I thought that Crystal Palace game was actually, I mean, the score, you wouldn't know it from the score line. It was a much closer game for most of the time. Um, the it wasn't like a game that we controlled as much as the scoreline would let on. That's for sure. And uh, amazingly, though, both of these games were really um, exhibitions for Pepe. He just really, I I'm a fan. He's really won me over this year, and getting 4 goals in the last 2 games. That's the kind of form I hope we can figure out how to stretch into a full season and get the most out of him going into next year, um, or the next season. I think um, it was a decent team performance, but I think um, there were some questionable calls. Like I think the Benteke incident was interesting. Him getting an elbow to Elneny's neck and not getting a red card for that. I don't know what the qualifications are now when we look at VAR. Like, is it like an inch below the face is not a big deal? Like, you can do anything to somebody's neck. I don't understand what. I, I don't
I
know.
mean,
I don't get
I,
it.
I I don't necessarily believe in and I've said it before, a cabal of people trying to do Arsenal wrong by VAR. But
No, no.
you do look at the calls, the red cards we've gotten this season in
Mm-hmm.
particular, some of them, and then the red cards we haven't gotten with VAR. And I don't understand the point at this point. I know I've said it before, and we don't have to go down this long road. I think I would enjoy soccer more without it, just straight up. It would make me happier.
Yeah, I mean they're still getting it wrong. So yeah, I don't get the point. Um, but yeah, that outside of that odd incident and them getting a subsequent goal from Benteke, which I was just not surprised about at all. I was like, of course, the guy that should have had a red card is the guy that's going to score.
Yeah, that's
That's
Arsenal.
just how it works. But luckily, Arsenal found a way to pull it out in stoppage time. I mean, that was getting 1 goal would have been great. Getting 2 goals, it's an embarrassment of riches we could have used much earlier in the season.
I found it funny because I think all the neutrals really wanted Palace to win because it was Hodgson's last game in
Mm,
charge, and there's a lot of feel goody factors and things, and Arsenal kind of spoiled that party. And
whoops.
so a lot of the podcasts I listened to were a little bit negative and about the game, and I don't mind spoiling the party. We've had our party spoiled enough that I don't mind spoiling other people's parties.
Right. Yeah. That didn't even cross my mind that they should let them win or let him go out on a draw or anything like that.
Yeah,
Like, if you want to win, coach your team better.
I mean, take nothing taken. I don't have any major hate towards Hodgson or anything like that, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah, you should go out
play
on
better.
a win that you earned. Um, the other highlight for me from this game outside of Pepe was in that second to last goal was seeing Odegaard just nail the pass to Martinelli. Like I mentioned on Twitter, like Odegaard is the type of player that if he sees runs, he's going to make the pass. He's the type that can like look up and see that and put it on the money. I mean, that was pinpoint pass for Martinelli. So I think um, I've got lots of feelings about the guy. I think I would sell several players to get him into this team at at the right price. I think he is a proven um, asset for Arsenal, and it's not often you can say that. We've had several loans recently that have not gone that well.
Ceballos. Ceballos. So I have a cough.
But I mean, we saw flashes of what Ceballos could do, but never any consistency, even when he was getting playing time. Um, but
Well, I
from the
mean, I think.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the thing about Odegaard that really stands out to me is that he's such a force multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
In that what he's not doing isn't necessary, or what he's doing isn't necessarily going to score goals. But if there's someone of quality around him, he makes them just shine so much brighter. You know?
Yeah, I agree, and I think he's got the profile of what Arteta likes. He's never had anything negative to say. I think they have been as clear as they can be that they are in for him if he's available and at the right price. Like there's no doubt that they would take him if Real Madrid are willing to sell. Um, Unfortunately, there's a lot of unknowns on that side. They're still waiting to hear if Zidane's going to stay. They're possibly looking at Allegri to take over, and I don't know if a coaching change would be more appealing to Odegaard, or like what his stance on that would be. And again, if the next coach decides that they want to keep him, he doesn't really have an option there anyway. So it's a lot of things have to fall into place for Arsenal to even get a shot at it, and the price has to be right at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't want there is a correct price to pay for him and an incorrect price to pay for him.
Mm-hmm.
In an ideal world where money wasn't an issue, I think it'd be a no brainer to add him to his team. But it's going to come down to price, and as you said, it's really going to come down to the
Yeah.
coaching because I mean, as we've said before, Zidane likes to rely on older players and doesn't really rate him, so we'd have a better chance. Whereas Allegri, I think, would look at this player and want him. I think anyone with half a brain looks at this player and finds a place for him on their team.
Yeah. Um, if the price is wrong, or if they're not willing to sell, there's definitely players out there. Emi Buendia has been heavily linked as an option. If Odegaard is not available, I think they would go that route. And at 40, I think they're asking 40 million for him, and I think that's a much easier price for Arsenal at the moment, and allows us to do some other things. So I think there's a very good chance, even if Odegaard is available, that he's going to be well out of that price range. If you're looking at 70 or something, then there's no way we can do that. I think even 60 would be pushing it. I think 50 is that sweet spot, but who knows?
Yeah,
If KSE, if the Cronkies really want to put their money where their mouth is, I think signing somebody like Odegaard is kind of necessary, but I don't know if that's where they're going to want to dump all their funds.
yeah. I mean, the transfer market's going to be really interesting. I was reading an article, and I think the actual transfer market was down 50% last summer and like 150% last January overall in all of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of teams are struggling financially, and Real Madrid is one of those teams struggling financially. And so you kind of have two competing things there, which is one is they may need to sell, which may mean that he's more on the market.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you have the idea of maybe they're just going to try and build internally and not bring in more players, which means that he's less on the market. So, yeah, I think this transfer window is going to be really interesting to see if teams are spending what they're spending, because I think it's going to be pretty low because most of the big money teams are in a lot of trouble. There's only a couple teams that aren't in trouble at all.
Yeah, I think maybe the most likely scenario could be Real Madrid just taking a punt on it and letting us have him for another year on loan, especially if we decide to cover his salary. That would save them money, and they could decide later what they want to do with him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually know his contract situation at Madrid, so I don't know if that would just ruin his value, because they're going to want to have some sort of return on him at some point.
Yeah, if he's got 3 years, I think that could make sense. But yeah, it's hard to just pulling up his profile here, but I am on the wrong site for contract stuff.
Yeah, I know he's been with them for a while, and he signed a contract when he was like 16, 15, something like that, something crazy like that.
Yeah. Well,
And it will be interesting.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
You're
I was
good.
going to say it will be interesting too because he is going to be playing in the Euros,
Mm-hmm.
and so depending on how he does, there might affect his value as well.
Oh, for sure. I'm just trying to pull up his transfer market profile here. Of course, I have to try to figure out this site where the contract stuff is, but anyway,
Yeah,
I digress. They have him
going
listed
down a
as
rabbit hole.
a $44 million player, which actually would be very appealing.
That might not be.
I would pay $44 million.
At that price.
Um,
But
he's
or is that pounds?
that's dollars.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, contract aside, if we could find a way to get him in at least one more season, that might not be bad. But you also risk if you keep him for one more season on a loan, and then can't get the deal across the line later on. Who knows what options you're leaving on the table? Like a Buendia might not be available, or Arwar has still been tossed around as a name that could come back into play if things didn't go right for Odegaard. So I think there's still players out there now, and who knows what changes if you decide to punt to the next transfer window or beyond. But at least with Odegaard, you have a proven commodity. You know exactly how he fits with this team. So I think that adds some value and might be more appealing to Arteta, who kind of wants to know what he has to build around rather than taking a chance on somebody that you've only seen on tape. I mean, it makes such a huge difference to have seen how he integrates and what he can do in person, especially on the training field where stuff shows up that you can't really capture from scouting.
Yeah, and talking about a full season long view of this, but in the last two games, have there been any other players that you think have raised their stocks or made their case for kind of continuing on into next year?
I've been surprised with Chambers. I think I do think we have to go and look at the right back market and see what's available. And if there's something for the right price, I think reinforcing there and having another option might not be a bad idea. I personally am not have been totally convinced by Cedric. So I think if somebody came in and wanted to make an offer for him, I'd let him go. And if not, I think he would be like a third choice for me. But I get the feeling Bellerin's gone, so then it really leaves you with Chambers and Cedric. That doesn't sound great. but
Sounds a little
it sounds a
thin.
little thin, sounds a little weak. And then you've got the left back position, which really doesn't have a backup. And if Cedric is it, then that's another problem. So I don't really think Cedric is the solution as a starter or a backup in either position. So if somebody came in and wanted to get him off our books, I'd be okay with that. But I do think both right and left back, you need some depth. But that being said, Chambers is a surprise inclusion in that group for me. Like I really thought he would come back and be maybe pushing for some minutes at center back. I thought he'd be in the mix for that position, but we've got some depth there with Saliba coming back into the fold next season. So I don't see Chambers going there, and I've actually been really surprised with how well he has done it right back. Like he can put in a cross. He seems pretty decent on defense. So he's another person I think in this last stretch of games, for as much as he's gotten to play, he's made a case for staying in the mix in that role next season. So he definitely jumped out at me as well. And like I said, Pepe, good Lord, that guy. I can't wait to see more of him. I'm really just surprised. I think I've had some negative things to say about him this season, just based on his consistency. But he is turned around as the team is turned around. Like his confidence, his consistency, his work rate, all of that has gone up steadily as the season has gone on. And I think the team has done better because of that. I mean, he's really been a driving force as far as our goal scoring at the latter part of the season. I mean, it has not been coming from Lacazette or Aubameyang. It's been mostly Pepe and other players. So I hope that Arteta has figured out what works best for him. I hope Pepe has figured out what works best for him, as far as like what he can do and his confidence levels. And I think coming into next season, building around him in that role, like you don't have a Willian or somebody else trying to take minutes away from him. You look at this and say, okay, Pepe's my guy. How do I get the most out of him and build around him tactically and with personnel and such? I think you can get so much more production out of this one player. And so I'm really looking forward to that, because you can't, I don't know what's going to happen with Lacazette, but clearly we cannot rely on Aubameyang to be our one and only goal scorer any longer. So you have to find those guys that are willing to be creative, that are able to create stuff on their own. And I think Pepe does that so well. I want to see how they can get even more out of him from the very beginning next season.
Yeah, and then there are two other players that, in my mind, have been definitely improving their stock. Unfortunately, they're not playing for us right now, which is Joe Willock and Torreira. Torreira, who won the La Liga
Right.
championship with Madrid. I actually don't really know how many more minutes or how integral he has been
Not
on
not
that
much. I
team.
think he's played last I checked, it was like 3 starts, so it was not a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. But that one being joking. But Willock, who actually has been integral for Newcastle staying up, he broke one of Shearer's scoring records at Newcastle, which I think shows more about Newcastle than it does about
Right.
Willock's talent necessarily. But do you think Willock comes back to a place based on his form at loan at Newcastle, which has been a success from everything I've heard about from Newcastle fans?
Yeah, it's when you're talking about where Arsenal is at financially, uh, it's it could go one of two ways. I think you can look at it and say, well, his stock is high. If the right offer comes in, we should definitely take it, because we've sat on guys before and let their stock fall again by trying to keep them when they didn't have a natural position, or like they weren't a natural starter in their lineup. Then all of a sudden, well, if they can't start on Arsenal, then maybe we don't want them. So I'd hate to bring him back in and have him be a depth option when he clearly has the skills and his form is going up. His his stock has risen because he's just been prolific as far as setting records. I mean, that gets attention. So I don't think you can just keep him as a depth option. And I don't see him being the first choice guy. I think he's not going to start next to Party, and I don't know where who he would take over for unless he was like slotting as um, the left winger or the number 10. I just don't know where he really fits in a 4-3-3, in a 4-2-3-1. I don't know. So I think he deserves better than what Arsenal could give him, really. And Arsenal could get more
Yeah, I
out
mean,
of
it could be
him
like
financially than they could if they tried to just fit him in somewhere.
it could be a lot like the Nketiah situation, which is you bring him back and then kind of languishes and doesn't really perform up to expectations. And quite frankly, I think Nketiah's value has gone
Mm-hmm.
down this last year. So I think, I think you're right that we definitely need to capitalize on some of these players, and we do need to sell. So, I mean, part two of that is whether there's buyers in the market. So,
I think like any comments would that Arteta has made or the team has made at this point about Willock are as much about keeping the players' confidence as well as indicating that he means something to Arsenal and we're not just going to just throw him away for pocket change. Like I think part of keeping a player's value is how you talk about them and how much they are valued at the team that they're in. It's you can feel valued on a team like Newcastle, but how does that translate into actual dollars? Because that's what matters at the end of the day. So it might win Willock over as far as feeling like he's a star at Newcastle, but Arsenal's got to get paid. He's got to get paid. I feel like that it could be a good move for him if the money's right. But I wouldn't be surprised if other teams came knocking. I think that he showed that he can do well at the Premier League level. I think that translates well to several leagues. I wouldn't be surprised if he got some other offers. So I think we should be listening if the price is right.
yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath for Mike Ashley to open up his
No,
pocketbook. He's not necessarily known as a big spender.
no,
So, but the other options and maybe even internationally, who
yeah,
knows?
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go, like you said, Nketiah. Ainsley Maitland-Niles is he could be somebody that they put in that right back position if he's willing to play there. That's another option if you're looking at a contingent of Cedric and Ainsley Maitland-Niles and Chambers. That's not too bad to me as far as like let's get us to next season or get us to a point where we can actually address this properly. I wouldn't feel too bad if you had three players of that quality there and then got somebody
Yeah,
decent to back up Tierney.
yeah. And Maitland Niles is definitely the opposite as far as
Mm-hmm.
value and what his loan spell did, which is he has not performed well at West Brom. I don't think anyone can
Yeah.
perform well at West Brom at this moment, so I don't necessarily blame him. But I don't think we're gonna have a ton of suitors knocking on our
No,
door
I
for
mean, as
him.
long as you've got that sort of player, I think he has done well in that right back position. And if he's willing to put in the work there and do what Arteta asks of him, I think he could flourish there. Like I said, I'm surprised at what Chambers has been able to do, and we know that Ainsley Maitland-Niles can actually play that position well on a good day. So, coming in it with the right attitude and having Arteta knows what he can do. I think he could get something out of him and kind of reinforce that position so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, maybe a year or half a year or however long he was there of being coached by Big Sam will teach him that there are worse
The
coaches in the
grass
world
is
than
not
Arteta.
always greener.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the other Reese Nelson, like I don't see a place for him in this team, even as like he has not had a sniff of the field, even though he's been around this whole season. He's barely played, and he's another player. I don't know if we can. He absolutely has to go out on loan at the very least because he's languishing at Arsenal, and I don't know how he has not been. I mean, he might be just dying to play, but I don't. He can't be happy with what he's got from Arsenal this season. So he's a player that we either got to develop him so that he can actually get on the field or get rid of him, because I don't. He's not doing anything. And playing for the U23s every once in a while, it doesn't count.
Yeah, and then the other player that's going to be coming back to us is, and I know we've mentioned it, is
Mm-hmm.
Guendouzi, who they did not get relegated this year, which they were flirting with Hertha. But the last I was seeing about it was he was just kind of mediocre there. He had some moments of brilliance and some moments of the Guendouzi we all know and love. But the reports I've been hearing from the Arsenal side of things is that they're excited to have him back, and we'll reintegrate him in. But that, I think, there's a big watch the space sign on that on that
Do you think
person.
he's going to be a coveted player, or do you think at this point his like? I feel like he has a reputation, and he's got now. You've got this example of how he played under Arsenal and how he's played under other teams. Do you feel like that profile has risen based on his skills, or do you feel like his attitude kind of outshines his soccer skills?
I don't think his attitude outshines his soccer skills. I think that again, I'm really nervous to make any predictions about this transfer market, because I don't know how it's going to be. I don't know if there's going to be a couple clubs spending a big amount of money, which means then it kind of trickles down and everyone's spending, or if no one's going to spend any money like in January. Um, but as far as his value, I don't. It's more if you know the player. I think there's a little bit of him getting a reputation, but there's plenty of teams and coaches that are willing to take a a chance on a person with a bad reputation if they think they can get more value. And I mean, it might lower his price, but I don't think the market for him is completely dried up. I think more telling is that he didn't light the world on fire at
Mm,
Hertha. So like and the Bundesliga is a high quality league, so it's not that crazy. But he's going past that point of being an improving player into this is
right,
kind of what he
right.
is. What you see is what you get. And I think that may have a lot of people worried, might not be the right word, but it might affect who wants him.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Arteta's seen enough to know what he can do, and I think part of what got him out the door was some of the attitude stuff did not gel with what Arteta was trying to develop in the locker room. Um, so I have a hard time seeing him reintegrating very easily with Arsenal. But I could be wrong. I like, for as much as I want Arsenal to go out and spend, I don't believe it until I see it. So part of me thinks, well, if anybody's kind of on the fence, we are more likely to keep them just to have the depth and not have to go out and replace players, especially like if the price isn't right. I don't know if there's going to be people coming in for him, but I don't want to see them just doing the fire sale and selling players super low just to get rid of people either.
Oh, and I think he is a good depth piece in that midfield. I think it's as I said, I'm not convinced of it for him as a starter, but I think he has a role that he could play. Although, not being in Europe means there's less need
Yeah,
for depth,
yeah,
but
yeah. The same goes for Torreira. I mean, how many players can we have in the midfield? It seems like there's a different profile desired than what we've had available. I think if you're Xhaka and El Neni, if those are the best, I don't think Torreira is going to come back and get playing time. I don't think Guendouzi is going to come back and get playing time in those positions. Certainly not Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Like players that
yeah.
are not at Party's level or above, I think are going to have a hard time getting minutes there. Xhaka aside, I don't know what his situation is going to be, but um, yeah, I think that's a position that definitely needs to be upgraded. So finding a number 10, finding another defensive midfielder, and finding a backup to Tierney. Those are like the big three in my mind. But striker, I mean, you could look at a lot of
Yeah.
different other areas where if the right situation came around, I could see Arsenal making a move. But I just don't know right now. It's really difficult to tell what they're prioritizing.
Yeah, and I want to save some of this for a conversation later because we're going to have a
Yes.
long
Well,
summer.
we'll have more to talk about, I'm sure, as more
So,
rumors come out. We'll maybe have a better idea of what could be real.
yeah.
All right. What do you think? We'll talk about the season as a whole a bit more in their next episode, but um, we only ended up 6 points out of fourth, which is crazy. Do you feel like at the end of the day, the season was nearly as bad as it felt, or was it just, um, I don't even know how to describe it. It was a very bizarre season, but like, what are your feelings kind of at the end here?
Well, at the end, it's a weird feeling, and I I kept on getting stuck on the when I was watching the game. The broadcasters kept on bringing up that Arsenal was the second best team the
Mm-hmm.
second half of the season, only behind Man City as far as points. And then defensively, Arsenal had one of the best defensive records in the league, full season, full stop. Had the most or among the most clean sheets, all sorts of defensive, uh, things. So when I was thinking about it, for the amount of despair I felt early on in the season, I think as the season closed, I'm I can feel a little bit more optimistic about how the season went. It felt really did feel like a season of two halves, and I'd much rather have the better part of the season be at the end of the year where you can feel like there's a bit of momentum and some forward progress. I think you're getting players that are actually coming into their own, like Pepe, and I think Party is, he didn't have a huge adjustment problem, but I think Party is finally kind of getting to speed, and I think we can expect better from Party next year. I think there's a lot of positives to be taken from the season. I'm also an optimist, in case you haven't noticed about that about me. But yeah, I think the early part of the season and how bad it was, and how we played against Villarreal really kind of hid how good of a second half of the season we had. And, all things being equal, making it to the semifinals of the Europa League isn't the worst result you can ever have. We were a goal away
Mm-hmm.
from making it to the final. How that played out sucked, but at the end of the day, it's a cup competition, and cup competitions are really, really hard to win. That's why they're impressive. So making it to a semifinal isn't something to just completely be like, we're trash. It'll be interesting to see the final, see who wins that one. Uh, so yeah, I think it isn't as bad as I think I was thinking it was when you kind of sit down and look at it in the hard light of day.
Yeah, there were definitely lots of moments of disappointment, and I think um, when we needed to the most, when we needed them to the most, they let us down, and I I think I said that wrong. When we needed them to come through the most, there we go, they let us down. But there there was joy there. There was improvement there. There were things to be excited about, and I think we saw progress despite not doing better in the uh, final table here. But it, it's it it feels like there are things that are going in the right direction. I think this summer could make or break.
Well, I mean, we
Oh yeah, I was just gonna
sorry, go
say this
ahead.
summer could make or break how, how I feel about that going into next season. Like it's nice to see those things that you can be excited about, but if you don't capitalize on them, if you don't find ways to actually improve this team, then all that is wasted, and we're back at square one. So we got to do more with those little silver linings.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, we also did get more
Mm-hmm.
points than we did last season. So there are these signs of actual improvement. You know, I think the Premier League has fundamentally changed too, which is something we have to understand. Which is it's no longer a top four league, which is just what we'd been used to. That now there are realistically 7 teams really vying for 4 spots, and and then beyond that, a couple teams that are really, really investing and playing smart that are going to be fighting to get into that 7. And it's a tougher league, as all the top teams. I mean, Man City had a horrible start to the season. You had, I mean, Leicester found out the hard way that it was hard to get 4th spot. Chelsea, Liverpool spent large amounts of the season out of those top 4 spots. It's been a tough season for everybody in those top spots, and it's next year's not gonna be any different. It's gonna be a fight, and to not think it's not gonna be a fight is, I think, just
Yeah,
old
and I
thinking
think
too.
we have to acknowledge that the FA Cup win um, hit a lot of the things that were prominent throughout the season, like things that the consistency has not been there. The the defense clearly has, but the offense not so much. Um, and I think there's still a lot of things that Arteta is learning, and so there is going to be growing pains, and there's definitely going to be some weirdness with coronavirus and all that. I think one of the greatest things in this last game was hearing the fans, or in the last couple games, because we heard Palace's fans as well. Um, Not having the fans is a huge impact. Like that, having fans in the stands could have added another 6 to 9 points. I think like some of those games are decided by the will of the fans and swaying, them swaying the calls a little bit from the referee, and willing the players to go on when they're totally wiped out. I think those little um, intangible things definitely make a difference. So it's hard to be super harsh on the team, on the coaches, because it's not a normal season. It hasn't been normal for the last season and a half. So pretty much all of Arteta's tenure has been bizarro land, um, and I think it is time that they get a good off season. They might not get the most rest, but they'll come back and get some time with the coaches, and hopefully hit the ground running, with a clear game plan in place, with hopefully a improved personnel on the coaching side and the player side. And I think having fans back in the stands, all of those things coming together, I think Arsenal could really look good next season. But it again, I said it comes back to really capitalizing on what is going right, building around the players that have proven themselves this season, and not making stupid mistakes in the transfer window. Like don't sell guys for too cheap. Don't spend too much. Don't go buy has-beens. Do this right, and this team could be fantastic next year, and they'll have a fan base that is clamoring to get behind them. But otherwise, you're wasting all
I mean,
this.
that was one of the things that I felt was really refreshing with the fans in there. Is I was very nervous that it was going to be a
Mm-hmm.
negative fan base, and you saw it at several other teams. I believe Tottenham was booed off at halftime at one of their home games. But I was fairly nervous about the fans' reaction to the team just getting in there. But just to hear how behind the team they were really was, I don't know, very heartening to me, because I think sometimes as fans we can have this negative view of the team and just get so overwhelmed with everything that you don't just support the team on the pitch. And I think that was refreshing to hear.
Yeah, I was worried about that a little bit, um, but I guess I was more expecting the Cronkies to get the brunt of it, because I feel like at some point whatever anger the fans had towards the team just kind of got switched. Be like, oh, that it's this guy, it's these guys that are the problem. I know people were upset still with Arteta, and after the Villarreal uh, game, I think he got his share of heat. But at the end of the day, I think most fans are behind the idea that it's the owners that are the real problem. So they didn't take it out on the coach or the fans at the game. And I think my impression was that everybody was just excited to be there. At least they were able to sneak in under the deadline there and get into the last game, which is better late than never. I was reminded just why it's so much more fun, and it's exciting to think that next season will be mostly back to normal. And um, I really do think that just makes such a huge difference for people there and just watching it at home.
I mean, I can't wait. I'm going to my first soccer game this coming weekend on a Sunday, which I'm pretty excited about, and I'm interested to see how it's changed in the stadium and how how things are different and how it feels, but also just excited to have that little bit of normalcy back, which I think is what the fans in the stadium at the
Yeah,
last game really
I
were
think
feeling.
there's excitement around just getting back to normal things in general. All right. I think that's a good place to stop for this half and come back and answer a couple of your questions. I think that's all we got left for you. So we'll be back in a minute, and we'll get right to those. So come right back with us. All right, welcome back from the break. And now we get to your questions of the week. So let's start with the first one, Tim.
The first one comes from our good friend of the pod, Jonathan King Monilas. And he asked, who's a worse team to win the Champions League? I.e., who do you not want to win this weekend?
100% Chelsea for me. Um, I I guess I could make the case that I don't want to see Man City win all the things,
Mm-hmm.
but they're a good team, and both those teams have been bought and paid for by massive money. So I can't decide on that. But as far as London rivals, I feel like I don't want to see Chelsea win things ever. So I think they are the ones that need to lose this game.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat where, I mean, yeah, because both teams are basically evil corporations, and it's kind of pick your poison on how much you dislike. I mean, I really dislike Abramovich, and I think Chelsea was the first team to really bring in that new style of just literally buying everything in every way
Uh huh.
and not base it on your clubs. And because before them it was Man U, and at least Man U was living within their means. Like they spend a lot of money, but they were earning a lot of money. It was through commercial things and stuff. Whereas Chelsea really were the first team to come in and just, I have $1 billion. I'm going to buy every player in the world. And how he got that $1 billion was extremely shady. So yeah, I don't like the team, and then I just don't really like the players in the same way. Like at least with City, there are a couple players I actually genuinely like. Like I can't not like De Bruyne. I know I've said it
Mm-hmm.
before. I generally don't try not to like players from other teams, but I do have a little bit of a crush on De Bruyne. Like he's just such an amazing player to watch, and it's whenever I have City on, I tend to just end up watching him play. It's like that Zidane movie or whatever, where you just sit there and watch him just be masterful. So yeah, I mean, it kind of sucks that there's gonna be yet another British team that wins the Champions League before we do, which is, that's less than exciting. But yeah, I think not Chelsea would be my quick answer. How about
Yeah,
for the Europa League?
I get, yeah, Manchester United needs to lose. I feel like I feel better losing to the team that ultimately wins the thing. So like Villarreal is the winner in my mind, just because it's like, well, we lost to the best. I don't feel
Yeah.
too bad about that.
Exactly. And I think it would actually shut up a lot of people about talking about that loss, because I think, yeah, that loss sucked, and we've dissected it here and forward, and I'm sure we'll talk about that loss again. But I don't think Villarreal is as bad a team as people are making them out to be.
Hmm.
And I think if they beat United, I think people at least will be aware of the fact that they are a fairly decent team. I also don't have a lot of hate towards Emery. I know that things didn't work out between us and them, but it's not. It's like one of those breakups you have where you're like, you know what? I do wish you well. Like,
This
you
is
know,
better for both of us.
yeah, exactly. Like, and so I do want him to be happy. And again, I actually kind of like Villarreal. I think they have a fun story. Uh, yeah, and I don't like Man U. I think that's
Yeah,
the short of it is that, yeah, I don't like Man U. They are the first team I learned to hate. So like, well, besides Tottenham, but
yeah. If I could see their dreams get crushed, I'm okay with that.
yeah, exactly. I would be well okay with seeing their dreams get crushed.
Um, we've got another question here from Tim Whittam. Uh, at the end, it came down to just 2 points with goal differences. So, which game would you have wanted to most get those extra 2 points from? Those we otherwise drew against. Southampton, Crystal Palace, and Fulham at home all spring to mind as games that could have had draws converted into wins.
Yeah, I mean that it's such a harsh thing to think about with those 2 points. It's something that I hope the players will think about as much as I've been thinking about it for the last like several days, and probably will think about until we qualify for Europe again. And
Mm-hmm.
it's for me, it's hard to pick out a single game for me more than kind of a period. And I just look at that period between like November and December where we just like literally just like shat the bed in every sense of the word. And if we could have just converted one or two of those easy games, and we're talking, Fulham, Brighton, these teams that towards the end of the season we were beating, but for whatever reason at the beginning of the season we couldn't do it. If we could have just converted one or two of those games, it would be a whole different season, And it's just like,
Right.
for me, it just shows how bad of a start to the season it was for us. Not just like the being close to relegation and all that, but just how those early season just compounded into this snowball that ends up meaning that we were 2 points short. How about you?
For me, the game that was just so, um, just the perfect example of the Arsenal season was the game against the Wolves back in February with David Luiz having essentially a phantom foul in the box, uh, subsequent red card and penalty, which ultimately led to Arsenal losing that game. Um, just completely frustrating from uh, David Luiz does it again, or does he? Like uh, VAR just completely failing once again, and really Arsenal only able to find one goal when they could have. It's just very. I'm still frustrated about it. Like I just watched it a minute ago just to remind myself about that foul, and it really just so many worse things do not get called, and this is next to nothing. Like literally,
Yeah,
air passed between these players, and he fell down.
yeah,
And yet that's the sort of season we had. Like these are the decisions that cost us games throughout the year. So it wasn't just this game, but this is like a perfect example of stuff we ran into over and over again. And I think it was the frustration that Arteta tried to articulate. And it's like, the thing that he learned from this season is there's so many things that are out of his control. Like he said that, and I this is the type of stuff he's talking about. Like it's really frustrating because a few of these decisions go our way, and it also changes our season.
Yeah, and I mean that penalty decision it was the moment I officially went against VAR, and like to this day I use it as an example of why VAR is just horrible and sad and awful. But if I'm remembering that game correctly too, one of the most frustrating parts of that game, and I do try and forget all of our losses because it's too much pain to hold on to these things. But if I remember correctly, we dominated that first half of that game,
Mm.
and I think we
Yep,
were dominating until the red card.
which was
And
right at the half.
yeah, and we just didn't score another goal. We got that one goal, and it looked like we were going to get a bunch more. And I remember being happy after that. I remember actually writing in our show notes and like kind of started writing up a few like like good notes and like this is a great da 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 because it just felt so dominant. And then so somehow we contrived to lose it, which I think is very emblematic of our season
Yeah,
in a lot of ways as well.
I forgot to mention Leno got a red card in that game as well.
Oh God.
I forgot the icing on the shit cake.
Yeah, I forgot that too for a really stupid
When
play.
he handled the
God.
ball outside of the box, which
Box.
every goalkeeper probably is good for at least one of those in their career. But this is just kicking the team while they were down.
Uh,
Really,
you picked a doozy of a game, but yeah, and that's exactly I think what Tim was kind of hinting at is there's just so many of those games that were. It wasn't like I'm not looking back at those like when we lost 3-0 to Liverpool or like some of those games where some of these very big teams came and spanked us or whatever. It's those games that really cost us our shot at Europe.
yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think of how if we bounce back after that. Nope, did not bounce back after that. Lost to Villa a few days later.
Oh,
Um, but then figured it out against Leeds after that
yeah,
on Valentine's Day. But those that was clearly we drew Man United the game before that, and that felt like that was one of those ties that felt like a win in a way because we stayed in the game and held them to no goals, and um, then to lose two players that spiraled out of control. So you draw a game, you lose a game, you lose the subsequent game because you have two of your defensive players out. These sorts of things sort of snowball, and that was kind of the ebb and flow of the whole season. Is just like these, what seems like an isolated incident affects the games around it, and then all of a sudden you're dropping points left and right, and those two games were very winnable. It's
yeah,
frustrating.
yeah. It is. I mean, we'll probably spend a lot more time just kind of dissecting the season, but I think that's the frustrating thing, and it's the same story from last season and the season before, where we missed out on a fourth place by a couple points, and it's these small margins and these small things. And it's the small games and small margins that other teams are doing so much better. I mean, that's why City is a better team on the field than us, is because they're doing these small margins correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do have hope going forward that Arteta can figure out a way to make these small margins go in our favor.
Yeah, it makes. I think you work on the culture, you work on consistency, and some of these decisions aren't getting left to chance. Like they are. Um, you're not relying on the calls going your way. You're in control of your destiny. You're playing well. Um, you're not leaving a lot up to chance. You are. Um, if you're doing the right things, more often than not, things will fall your way. And I think, yeah, it is kind of like you. I do feel like Man City kind of creates their own luck. They don't really have to worry about these bizarro situations coming up and biting them because they're just in control of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, when you're relying on calls going your way, then that's the issue, because
Mm-hmm.
calls tend to go both ways, and calls kind of become 50-50. And as much as I hate that Louis call, and I to this day hate that call, if we had finished some of the chances we had, it wouldn't have mattered,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. It wasn't
And
like they blew us out of the water. They
yeah,
scored 2 goals, like pretty much one at the half and then one 5 minutes into the second half. And we couldn't find another goal in that second half. That could have been a point, and that there you're halfway to making up those 2 points right there.
yeah,
That's it. Those little
yeah,
things.
yeah. But as I said, in looking at one of the things that was nice is I kind of, with this question, looked through the season as a whole and saw, and you really can see our uptick in form. And it's not just the teams we played, because we got some really good results in this last part of the season. We beat Chelsea. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people are saying it's a fluke, yada yada, but I think you can't just necessarily fluke through beating a team either. You know,
Right. It wasn't like we didn't do anything in that game,
yeah,
or I mean, I guess the goal was a fluke thing, but the way that they were able to hold them to no goals is
hmm,
not nothing. Defense is part of the game.
yeah. I mean, I think really what it's kind of how this team is shaping up in my mind is that we're definitely moving more towards a 1-0 to the Arsenal style of play than we are to a Arsene Wenger ball style.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, until we can get back into Europe, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because you look at the other end, you have Leeds, who is definitely playing attractive style football, but they have really really bad defense, and they finished below us, and they weren't going for the title. So I think there's something we said to be in having a defensively secure team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's one less thing to think about. Like we said, it's important building block. Like if you can have a solid defense, um, and then kind of it just takes some of the pressure off the rest of the team. Like if we don't have to worry about tracking back as much because the back line and the defensive midfielders can take care of that, and you can keep four men up the field pretty much. It opens up a lot of things, and it makes you more dangerous on the counter and in transition when you have players that are able to stay further up the field. So it's not nothing to have a good defense. Like I really do think it is a building block in what Arteta is trying to do.
Yeah. So hopefully we can now get the personnel to solidify that and move forward.
Yes. Okay, let's call it a week. Let's call it a season. That's
Yeah.
that's it for unofficial season 2 of the podcast.
And there's one more thing I wanted to bring up before we went, which is the end of the fantasy
Ah, yes,
league,
I forgot.
which, surprising to nobody, is Omkar Hardikar won. Congratulations with his Hardies. He got a total 2,356 points, which is quite a bit more than I got. And he finished about 200 points ahead of Granelli, Misquith. Ashwin was right in there in third place, and Joe Robinson in fourth place is in the 2000s. There are quite a few people in the 2000s. Friend of the pod, Chandran, Charles Allison's around there, Phil Rossiter. Basically, a lot of people were right around there. But the most important part of the table, of course, is the battle between you and me, Caleb. And I beat you by about 100 points, a little less than 100 points.
All right,
Which,
that's an admirable amount. I
yeah, well, I
tip
mean,
my
really,
virtual cap to you.
what it was really at the end of the day was that you started with a slow start where you didn't really check your team all the time. I think if you would have been consistent in checking your team,
Oh,
I think
I
you
could
probably
have
would have started to pass
won
me.
the league.
I don't know if I'd go that far. So yes, we do have a prize. It's a surprise. I'll show it to you. So, Omkar, if you're listening to this, I do make it a requirement that you listen to the podcast to get the prize, because I'm that kind of a jerk. Get a hold of us. You know the usual ways to get a hold of us. I'll send you the prize, and we'll have a new fantasy league next year.
And I will try harder. I want to get 2,000 points. That's my goal.
Well, I'm hoping to get Omkar on the pod at some point so he can give us his secrets
Oh, yes.
for the yes. during the summer when there's not much to talk
I
about.
like it.
But it all relies on him listening and contacting us.
Yes. So if you're out there, get in touch. Let's talk about the ways you can get in touch with us. But first of all, segue. Thank you for listening all this season long. I know it's been a tough one. We've probably had more negative. Well, we're pretty positive around here, but we probably had more negative things to talk about than most other podcasts. So I admire those of you who have stuck with us and have been listening consistently. So thank you. And if you're just checking us out for the first time, I'm sorry. This is a weird episode to jump in on, but why not? Why not jump in now? It's never too late. Let's start the next season off right. So if you like what you've heard, subscribe, review us, let us know how we're doing, let other people know how we're doing. Subscribe on your favorite platform, whether that's Google, Spotify, Apple. We're everywhere. So get your podcast where it's most convenient for you, and make it super easy on yourself. You don't have to download us every week. We can just show up on your phone. If you want to reach out to us with questions, comments, anything that's going on in the off season, we're happy to hear from you, because it's going to be slow on news most of the time. So if you have any questions for us, not even Arsenal related, I will take them in the off season. I'll take them all the time, really.
Yeah.
Weston,
it'll be like a ask me anything type of summer.
Yes, ask us anything. I'm not saying we're going to necessarily read your question, but why not send it? See what happens. Let's throw things at the wall and see what sticks. West and North London is one, or West and North London at gmail.com is one way you can get a hold of us. The other option would be at West of North, or excuse me, at W of N London on Twitter. Follow us there, send us your questions, see what else we post in the off season. You never know. You can leave us a voicemail at anchor.fm/west of North London / message. If you want to leave us a voicemail there, we'll put you on the next episode. So that's always good when you get those. The other place you can find us is YouTube. We actually post video there of the podcast. Maybe we'll someday do some live things. That might be an idea for the off season, or to kick off the next season, or something like that. So subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay on top of that sort of thing. And I think we just have to thank Bobcat. That's all we got left. We've got an awesome theme song from them. So if you like what you've heard from them, bobc.at is where you can find their website. They have No Course to Follow is their latest album. I hope that's still true. Somebody correct me if that's not true. I'm going to go with that.
It is still
okay.
True. As I said before, they're actually looking to start playing shows soonish. I know they've been rehearsing because they're all in a vaccinated bubble. So
sweet.
Hopefully when the shows start coming through, they'll be back to playing shows. But that is the latest album so far.
Awesome. So yeah, go check that one out and tell them we sent you. All right, that is it for this week, for this season, for the moment. We'll be back with a lot more as the off season wears on. So, as always,
see you at the next gun show.